Hi, this is Alex. Welcome back to Banging Your Head Until the Right Answer Comes Out. This is going to be a little special episode of Project List, video number P-0001, a hyper-optimistic list of things to do in no particular order. So here's the overview. Our goals: to learn and teach about the AWS cloud and other technical structures, go down to the gritty details on architecture and design, review existing systems design in data and ERP architecture, subject to a larger audience's scrutiny and possible design revision. So it would be great if some of the stuff I put out there and someone's like, well, there's a better way to do this. And that's fine. I might not know the best way to do something, and I'll go about it the way I've done it in the past. And if someone has something that makes it better, faster, then I would like to know that. Alright, give me something other to do than apply for hundreds of jobs and read the, "Wow, your experience is impressive. We've decided to go with other candidates' emails, responses to my applications." It's hard not to be frustrated, but it makes me realize that I need to have something else to do than sit here and apply to hundreds of jobs. I've applied to something like 250 jobs already. Some are black holes and I never find anything out. Some are responsive, at least they say something, and some, they give me this email. And in many cases they're like, please apply to other positions, and that's great, and I do. But who knows, that might just be HR BS or, public relations BS, even beyond that, because, hey, we don't want this person mad at our company because they might buy something from our company. So let's let them down lightly. Okay. Oh, that kind of moved me. Okay. So, raw learning component. And this is something I've been doing for a while now. It's important to upgrade and refresh my skill set. IT is a constantly changing environment. And I think in the end, the world is a constantly changing environment. So my two major focuses are project management and techniques and my technical capabilities. I like to be T-shaped. There is a downside to being T-shaped, though, and that is that there will always be someone that is more expert than you, say, at cloud functionality or developing code, because you're spread across multiple functional areas. Be that as may, I'd rather be someone that understands the business, project management, and technology than a developer, say, who is just focused on the technology. So I want to maximize the utilization of Pluralsight resources, and I put in hours and hours and hours, almost 90 hours on Pluralsight so far, and I expect that to go much higher. Gain certifications where possible. So I've already worked through 2 certifications, my PSM1 Professional Scrum Master certification and my AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner certification. And I've already had like 3 certifications before that. So up next, potentially AWS Solutions Architect Associate, which I'm doing a lot of learning on now, and I've got the sample Udemy tests to take and go through those a few times, and possibly others, on research. I might, I was doing a project management learning on Agile and Scrum, and they started talking about Kanban. Well, I don't really know much about Kanban, so I did an audio course, well, it was a video course, mostly talking, though, about Kanban. And now, Matrix style, I know Kung Fu, I know Kanban, at least on a theoretical level. And it's a neat thing. I like Scrum better, but there are elements in Kanban that I would bring in to any kind of Scrum situation. So projects, what I'm going to discuss next. are to lend real-world application to the learning. So my next point here, learning that isn't applied often atrophies. And by atrophy, I mean, bits and pieces drop off one week to another. I used to ride a motorcycle, and you spend 2 weeks not riding, and the little muscle movements that are programmed into your mind from riding start to go away. So that's why, after a season of not riding, people are not as good riders as they remember. You lean into a turn, maybe you'll panic. So I have my CSSGB, Certified Six Sigma Green Belt, and I got it, I attained it. It's a tough test. Same thing with my PMP, and I ended up not using those in the workplace. So those pieces of information atrophy. But some things continue on. I've got the fishbone diagram, and SciPop is something, one of my favorite kind of analysis of a situation. Anyway, it is a lot better to demonstrate you are a fast learner than to say it in an interview. Alright, well, personally, I don't like it when people go to interviews and are like, oh yeah, I'm a fast learner. Well, I mean, that's good, but can you demonstrate that? Especially, right now I'm unemployed, which I hate to say, and, I've got time to do all this learning and do things. I should be able to show my work, show that I'm a fast learner, and I won't be at an interview saying, oh yeah, I'm a fast learner. I can say, well, I do learn things quickly, and here's the proof. Okay. So one of the projects I want to do is there's a national address database. This is great master data, and it's big. It's like 12 gigabytes when you uncompress it. It's got a big footprint inside of SQL Server. Excuse me. It's got over 50 million records. So I want to take in the data and normalize it to reduce its footprint. And maybe I'll make an app to present that data. And maybe I'll do a little data analysis for the uniqueness of the address data, and possibly use Tableau or other data analysis to visualize the data. So we'll see. So when I was working at Montefiore Medical Center, I had the joy of working closely with the pharmacy for a couple of years. And one of the interesting data sets I worked on was the NDC data. So I'm going to work through that again. At that time, I had access to FDB, First Data Bank, and I had access to our own master data inside of SAP. And I had access to master data from Cardinal with their CIN numbers, their cardinal identification numbers. And the data was all over the place, and I had to work through and make it useful. And that was a really good exercise. I enjoyed that. I won't have as much data to work with this time around, but I do remember that the NDC data is not as clean as I would like it. Otherwise, that company, First Data Bank, wouldn't even be in business. And we'll see what I can do with it. And some of my thoughts here, cloud-based update process, uploading that file from the FDA, maybe a viewer application, and a good discussion on master data. When I was working at Montefiore, it seemed like every system had master data. Excuse me. First time I've got a cold since the whole COVID thing has been going on, so that's not a really great feeling, but I think it's just a cold because I have mucus, and that is not one of the leading symptoms of COVID. Anyway, so it seemed like every system had its own master data, its own master data entry, and so the pharmacy would have to enter that master data in multiple systems, and whenever you have people entering master data in multiple systems, you have human error. So, we had Epic. Well, that was just starting when I was there. Fax, Cure Fusion, carousels in the pharmacy, drug storage, and Pixis machines. And they all had their own master data, and that master data has to match throughout the system. So my view is that there should be a single source of truth, one master data maintenance or governance system that pushes that data out to all the other systems. And maybe what I work on will be something of a help for that. That horrible, horrible spelling error there. Well, it's not that horrible. It's probably just a capital I. Anyway, so ERP ground up design. Why do this? I know there are dozens, if not hundreds, of ERPs out there, and several free ones. Why do this? And some are already cloud-based, including we were running Viewpoint Vista in a cloud. And it could be overconfidence, but they all get even the basics wrong. There's huge table sizes in terms of number of fields. Has anyone heard of normalization at all? Basic design decisions. Something I can discuss later. Terms like customer master and vendor master are common terms. But is that necessarily the right thing to do? In an employee master, aren't these all just entities? And there's a specific problem that we had at my last employer where if a customer was also a vendor, and they owed us money, and we owed them money, we would pay them, and they weren't paying us. Well, it seems like an ideal situation where we could cancel these things out as long as dollars are dollars, right? But if you have to manually put in a customer number and a vendor, that relationship is subject to error. But if their customer number and their vendor number is the same number, then there's a way to say, well, this entity both owes us money and we owe them money, and it should be easier to reconcile. So why would my ERP be better? Well, I've had experience on a daily basis with 3 ERP systems, and I've seen their flaws exposed. And it's always better to try and offer a solution rather than just complain. Oh, it's horrible. They used a GUI. They used this. They've got 60 fields, 120 fields, 300 fields in a master data table. It's not normalized. There's ways to deal with this. And so design from the ground up as a serverless solution, not lift and shift BS. So we did a lift and shift with a lot of our systems at my last employer. And at the end of the day, it's expensive. And certain things like AWS Aurora database or Microsoft's Azure database with Azure SQL would be great to use, except that they're functionally different than a regular SQL server. Well, Microsoft SQL Server, let's say. So at the end of the day, someone would have to convert these things from that SQL Server to Aurora database or SQL Azure. So maybe it's better to try and build this from the ground up. And there are so many functions inside of AWS or Azure that you could build something and, I need to send an email from my ERP solution. Well, you have to set it up. It's inside the ERP solution. Maybe you've got a bunch of other solutions and you have to set up email in all of them. Whereas in AWS, we could just, simple notification system. We could do that. And then we've got the SQS queue. When people go to do things, we can queue them up and loose couple these processes. So if something does go wrong, it's still got that. It's like buffered in place. And then incorporate document management. When I was working with SAP over at Montefiore, we needed to do documents inside of SAP and make them be able to come up and be viewable. And there was this whole nightmare scenario where we had to get a new server product, new servers. We need to replicate that across the dev, production, QIS, test, sandbox, and at the end of the day, it was going to be like $500,000, which was crazy. And some solutions get it significantly better. Viewpoint has document management built into it, and that's pretty cool. But maybe we could do it even better. I don't want image data in the database. Eventually, this becomes a problem. But who knows? Maybe not in the new cloud databases. It will be something to research. All right. And here we go. All work and no play, 3D printing and design. So I enjoy doing 3D printing. I don't know if you can hear it right now, but my 3D printer is finishing up a print as I speak. And maybe, I can use this to make money at some point. We'll see. There are 3 major processes, and I added one, and I didn't change that. There are 4 major processes with 3D printing. You have to design it, you have to slice that design, you print it, and then there's a post-process. And inside of each of those are other processes, like post-process, where you sand, and you fill, and you sand, and you paint, and, what comes out of the 3D printer isn't perfect. There's layer lines if you're using FDM printers, or if you're using other type of printer, it comes out, but it needs to be cured, and you need sometimes a machine to cure that. So anyway, those are topics that I can talk about. And then it's a hobby that engages the creativity of your mind, my mind. It's enjoyable. You don't get to be so creative sometimes with the work elements that you do on a daily basis. And there's a certain joy of making things with your computer, and then you print it, and it's not a piece of paper. Oh, look, I've got Benchy, and I tested it to test my printer, rather. And you can see that there was bridging here, and all sorts of good stuff. And then there's the failures. Here's a failure. It did pretty good, but the support structure for other pieces didn't print properly, and it had to be stopped. And so something like 3D printing makes me think that perhaps there's a post-manufacturing future, at least for certain things, where I can print toys maybe, if I had young children. And then when they're done with it, I just put it into the machine again, and it rips it up, creates new filament, and prints a different toy. And infinite variation for a child to play with. And, oh, I missed this other toy. It's a submarine. All right, well, let's remake that submarine because we destroyed it and made something else with it at some other point in time. Okay, so sum up. Raw learning. Something I'm already deeply involved with. So maybe we'll do a couple of videos and I'll track what I'm learning. And maybe I can get input from people and they'll say, well, you really need to learn Kubernetes. Okay, maybe I'll do that. The National Address Database. Trying to normalize this data and make it smaller to fit inside a SQL Server Express 10 gigabyte limit. So we'll see. That may or may not work out. We may have to say, you know what? MySQL free tier might be the way to go. Alright. The FDA NDC drug master data, something that should be relatively fun for me to work through. And it's got some complexity in there. ERP from the ground up. Who knows how far I'll take that. But, it should be an interesting process. We probably need to start out with thinking about security. They've got security first, second, and last, and you can do everything else in between there. So maybe we'll learn how to use Amazon Cognito and see how to control access to tables, and we'll probably use Aurora database, even though there is no free version yet. And maybe we can control access to views or tables with AWS Cognito, tied in with groups or roles in security, in the IAM accounts. Anyway, there's certainly too much to do to be idle while unemployed, and we'll get going with that stuff, and I'll make videos, and we'll see what happens. Have a good week.